Well, how's everybody this morning? Are you doing well? Are you awake? Do we need to do some jumping jacks before we get started to get everybody into it? Hey, I want to welcome you to Mag Church this morning. I am Adam Allen. I have the pleasure of being the lead pastor of this church. And let me just say this, that we're so glad that you are with us this morning. And if you haven't been with us, let me just catch you up, right? We have been in a series for the past 2 weeks, as you can just see, that we have called Water, Sugar, and What to Do with Lemons, right? And in this series, we're discussing the times that we find ourselves really unsure with what to do with life when it gives us lemons. How many of you have been in situations to where things have happened in your life that you didn't know what to do with? It didn't have all of the answers that you thought you would find, but yet you're still dealing with those things. And we all know that the famous statement, right? When life gives you lemons, can you finish it? Make lemonade. And we all know that. We hear it all the time. And to be honest, it's a great, concise, one-line statement that is really easy to remember. That's why we memorize that thing. That's why we know it, is because it's short, it's sweet, it's to the point, but here's the problem with it. How many of us know that life and the situations and issues that we find ourselves in, well, they're not concise. They're not simply defined by one little statement. It's not like that at all, is it? It can't be condensed into a simple statement like that. I mean, it would be nice if it could be. It would be nice if we could figure everything out easily, but it's not, because life, as all of us know, is very, very nuanced. That is the painful aspect of life. What you and I deal with. We don't know, honestly, if there is enough words in the English vocabulary to even capture what we have gone through. Because how many times is someone coming up to you and they go, "Hey, how are you doing?" And you're baffled by that question, because the truth is, you don't know how to answer it yourself. In one instance, you kind of think like, well, I know they're just being nice. But the frustrating point is when you don't even know what to say to that. You don't know how you feel about yourself. And so each day, every single day, you wake up, you conceal our exterior wounds, and we push down our emotional wounds. We look at ourselves in the mirror. We pick up the mask that we are going to wear that day and push through. And we do this every single day, making ourselves, putting on the biggest smile, but dying on the inside. Recently, as I was putting this sermon together, I have been pondering a verse that I actually found in Proverbs 4:23. It was written by a king named Solomon. And the Bible tells us that Solomon was considered the wisest man, one of the wisest men to ever live. This is the same king who also wrote the book known as Ecclesiastes, which is this huge, fiery rant. Guess what it's about? About life. And you know what he comes to the conclusion of? He comes to the conclusion, and this is what he says, that life, everything is meaningless. I bet this guy was just a blast to be around at a party. He says, everything is meaningless, but you really have to look at Proverbs 4:23, and I want you to look at this, and I want you to take this to heart this morning, and here's what it says. Above all else, guard your heart. Guard your heart, because everything you do flows from it. Guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. And I have known this verse most of my life. I can recite it forwards and backwards. I know exactly where to go to find it. But you know what the problem is? I wish I would have heeded its instruction a lot sooner in my life. How many of you can say that? Because the truth is that when I look at this, it probably would have saved me from a lot of trauma and a lot of pain in my life. I probably wouldn't be carrying some of the scars and the baggage in my life had I not just heeded to this and understood that it is very important as you walk through this life to guard your hearts, right? I say it all the time. Every single one of us that is sitting here today or even listening online, every single one of us is just a byproduct of what has happened to us. Whether that be the good things or whether that be the bad things, every single one of us are just a byproduct of what has gone on, what has happened in our lives. And then there is the sobering reality that we find at the end of that verse. For everything you do flows from it. Have you thought about that? Everything we do flows from it. Your anger flows from it. Your pride flows from it. Your running, your hiding flows from it. You are literally, it's seeping out of us sometime, and I'll never forget. It was the summer of 1997. And I had learned that the family across that I was also friends with the boy that lived there, they were getting ready to adopt really a son, a boy that was going to be about the same age as I was. And it spread through the entire neighborhood that I lived in. And in this neighborhood, they came together and they kind of pooled some money because they wanted to have a welcome type of party for this kid that they were adopting, right? And so I'll never forget it. It was just like yesterday. We're at my house, and for some reason, I don't know why this is. I can't quite remember. But it seemed like the whole neighborhood was at my house. I'm outside shooting hoops, just loving life. And all of a sudden, I see this little lanky, bowl-cut haired boy that has to be around 12 years old coming riding in on his brand new 12-speed bike. He rolls into my driveway. I have no clue who he is. All of a sudden they say, "Hey, here he is." And they all say, "We're so glad to have you." And it was great. It was the kind of things that you want to see. So he comes in and they hand him this box, and it was brand new shoes. Now I started thinking about this. I don't remember the neighborhood ever doing that for me. I thought, what gives? But they never done that for me. So he opens this up and he looks at this surprise and he goes, is this for me? Is this really for me? And they were all like, "Yeah, it's for you, man." And he looked at all of us and he was like, "Thank you." And we stood there for a while, just perplexed, like he just kept looking at it. And then slowly he shut the box and he handed it to his new adopted mom. And then his new adopted mom looks at me. She goes, "Hey, Adam, would you mind taking him around the neighborhood to introduce him to some of the kids?" I was like, "Absolutely not until I get those shoes." No, I was like, "Absolutely, I'll do that." So we hop on our bikes. We get ready to drive to the nearest basketball court where I knew they all were. And all of a sudden we're going, he goes, Hey, hold up. I'm like, "Oh, okay." He hops off his bike. And I kind of stop. I'm standing on mine. He comes up to me, he goes, "You think you can fight me?" And I was like, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, you think you can take me?" And I go, "Where is this coming from?" And he goes, No, you think you're better than me. And now I've just met this kid. And he's wanting to fight me. He just got a present, and he's wanting to fight me. And I'm sitting there going like, I don't know what to do in this moment because I'm trying to be nice. But yet he is yelling at me. He's screaming at me. He's in my face. And I am doing everything I can to just hold on to the bike. He's like, no, it is. And I said, "Dude, what?" And finally I throw the bike down. I get in his face. I'm like, "What is your problem?" He goes, "Forget about it." He turns around, gets on his bike, and heads home. And I couldn't put my like, what is going on with this kid? What would cause him to react that way? So I was done with him. You ever been that way? just done with the way that someone has been treating you? Like there was no reason for him to treat me that way at all. Because the truth is, when we looked at it at the next several of weeks, my friends and I, we would avoid him like the plague. We would see him coming on his brand new bike and his brand new shoes, and we go, all right, we got to get up and leave. So we would get on our bikes and leave him behind, right? There were moments to where he would be at the door of some of the friends that he knew that we were all out because all of our bikes were out in front. He would be ringing the doorbell. We would kind of look out and we would see at him. We just let him ring. Oh, come on, don't you judge me like that. Just let him ring the doorbell. I know it's not the greatest thing. I know it's not the nicest thing. But I couldn't figure out, who tries to fight everybody in the neighborhood? Who tries to act like they are tougher than they actually are towards everybody they come in contact with? Who is someone that when they get a prize is ready to fight the person that's trying to show? Who does that? Who does these kind of things? And I'll tell you who does these kind of things. Who does these kind of things are people with deep wounds and deep scars that end up causing deep insecurities. That's who does these kind of things. As followers of Jesus, we have to remember what John 10:10 tells us. It tells us this, that the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. I want you to listen to me for a second, friends. The enemy does not care what has happened to you. He doesn't. He doesn't care about your scar stories. He doesn't care about what it's cost you. He doesn't care how badly it'll mess you up. In fact, he prefers you this way. He prefers you wounded. He prefers you a wreck. He prefers you to be beaten down by this world. That's why he allows it. That's why he even promises it. He wants to absolutely destroy you. He is not here to play nice with you. Many of us are acting like this is just a warning sign of something that the enemy might do to us. You just have to watch out. But I am actually here to tell you that this is something that the enemy is already doing to every single one of you sitting here today. The enemy is prowling around looking who he wants to devour. He is currently right now trying to destroy you. He is already stealing things from you. He has already done that. How many things has he already stolen? He is stripping you of your identity day by day, wound by wound, scar by scar, trying to turn you inward. I am fully convinced that one of the enemy's greatest strategies is to take the perceived insufficiencies that believers believe that they have and exacerbate them to the point and to the extent that they become deep insecurities that cause them to forfeit what God has promised them. I am fully convinced of that. And you know how I know when someone is in bondage to insecurity? You know how I know that? It's because whenever I hear someone say John 10:10, you know what they'll always say? They'll always recite the first part of that. The thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But listen to me. As a believer, you've forgotten the second part of it. That's the best part of this. They quote the first part of John 10:10. We have people who are giving more power to the enemy's ability to kill, to steal, and destroy than we do Jesus' ability, in the last part of that, to give us life to the full. Are you there today? To where you are looking at all that the enemy has stolen from you. You are tired of him trying to kill the promises of God in your life. You're sitting there and you keep reciting John 10:10, what we would call version A, the first part of that verse, but you have forgotten the promise hidden in the verse towards the end of it, that God is going to fulfill these things. He's going to come in and give you all that you need. I fully believe that if you believe it, God can bring these things back into your life. And when the enemy has caused your insecurities to be bigger than your God, we, a lot of times, become masters at hiding and concealing all of our insecurities. And there's so many believers that are hiding and concealing their insecurities. What we end up doing is that we follow in the footsteps of Adam and Eve that is found in Genesis 3, where they are cowering behind the trees, taking matters into their own hands, trying to hide their own vulnerabilities. And it's God that asks them a very haunting question. It's God that asks them deep into where they are, like, where are you? Where are you? And it's a confusing question when you think about it. Because God is all-knowing. He knows everything. He certainly knows exactly where Adam and Eve is, right? We would all understand that. After all, it is this God that seems to be in close enough proximity for Adam and Eve to know that He's coming. He's in close proximity for Adam and Eve to know that He's coming. And what if it's not a question of God for searching as if He doesn't know where they are? What if it's a question of finding? What if it's God saying, I know where you are, but do you know where you are? I know where you are, but do you know where you are? Do you know where you are today? Do you not see me? Do you not understand? Do you like where you are? Is this where you want to be? Is this what you thought it would be? And if so, then why are you hiding? Why are you hiding behind that pain? Why are you trying to cover up everything? Why have you bought into the lie of just fake it until you make it, but meanwhile you are decaying inside? Why? You were not made to live this way. You were not created to be this way. They are hiding because deep down inside, they don't want to be exposed. They don't want to be exposed. They don't want God to see them in this condition like this. And so they do what all of us have learned to do, to hide it. To hide it. To hide it. They are hiding and they are cowering because the enemy has sold them the lie that the only reason that God didn't want them to eat of the tree was because God was afraid that they would be like Him. He sold them on the supposed insufficiency that they have, and it is the same insufficiency that we all still wrestle with today. And you know what that is? That we aren't God. Do you understand? Like we aren't God. We struggle with wanting to be God ourselves. God, why didn't you do that for me? Why didn't you keep that from happening? Why did you allow me to go through that thing? Why did you take this person away from me? When we do those kind of things, we are questioning it. And I'm not saying that we can't have questions or concerns, but sometimes the reason why we are so upset and we hide is because we're upset and frustrated that we couldn't do something about it. We certainly try to act like we're God, don't we? Attempt to heal what only God can. Attempting to get revenge for every single wrong committed against us. How many have a laundry list of people on your spiritual hit list that have hurt you, that have wounded you, that you cannot get past just forgiving? We are artificially manufacturing peace for the chaos in our soul through things like drugs and alcohol, and I see people turn to it all the time. We are numbing ourselves to oblivion from the pain, but dying on the inside because we believe the lie that God created us with an insufficiency that has left us with a bleeding heart of insecurity. And in Genesis 3, 7, and 8, it says this, "Then the eyes of them both were opened, and they realized that they were naked, so they sewed fig leaves together and made coverings for themselves." And in 8 it says this, "Then the man and his wife heard the sound of the Lord as He was walking in the garden in the cool of the day, and they hid from the Lord God among the trees of the garden." And I think what's shocking is the change of relationship that we see take place. I imagine that at one point, Adam and Eve used to run to their Creator with open arms, ready for the embrace. But now they cower, naked, vulnerable, and afraid, hiding amongst the trees. And it's crazy what insecurity will make you do, right? Absolutely crazy. You know, it's interesting because in ancient Greek and Rome cultures, entertainment rushed on the scenes and became a major draw, much like it is for our American culture today, entertainment. And it was especially this way through something known as the theater. The theater. It is said that the Greeks invented theater, but the Romans took it to the ends of the earth. They spread it all over the Roman Empire. People would literally fill theaters to watch their favorite actors. And what's interesting about this is that in Greek, these actors were known as hypokrite. And they would watch them perform, right? And that word, hypokrite, probably sounds familiar since it's the word that we derived our English word hypocrite from. Hypocrite from. In Greek, it means one who sifts under the mask. One who sifts under the mask. And to put it in simple terms, it is someone who pretends to be someone or something that they are not. We have heard this definition all of our lives. And here's what I found intriguing is that in ancient Greek and Roman cultures, I want you to listen to this. People actually saw the danger of living too long behind the mask. There was a real fear that an actor might actually forget who he really is, which caused society to actually put out a warning for actors not to remain in character for too long, lest they lose their true identity to it. Lest they lose their true identity to it. I find that this is what Satan tries to do to us time and time again. He tries to get us to stay in character long enough that we start to forget who we really are. I think it is one of the greatest tragedies in the church of watching believers forget who they are in Christ. Forget the power that they have through Christ. But I see it all the time. The enemy, he attempts to get us to believe that we are defined by our insecurities and our insufficiencies. We become known by our issues instead of our actual names. And before you know it, we no longer are even answering to our actual name. We are answering to our issues. It is all we know. It is all we see. It's all we tell people about are our wounds and our issues and our insufficiencies. And to combat this, what we do, what we've learned to do, the society has taught us to do this. I would even go as far as say the church has taught us to do this too. You know what we do? We put on the mask. We put on the mask. And we become the greatest actors the world has ever seen. And to be honest, this is one of the greatest dangers to a believer. And you may be going, why is that, Pastor? Because to hide behind the mask of insecurity and indeficiency is one of the greatest dangers to your soul. Even Jesus knew this when in Matthew 6, he blasts the religious leaders for being hypocrites. And I want you to lean into this a little bit. 17 times he calls them out for being, you know what he calls them? Actors. Hypocrites. Hypocrites. 17 times he calls them out because they were fixated on getting people to look at them and to think of them in specific ways. They were never interested in actually being pious or actually being holy as they were in having onlookers credit them with those qualities. They were the very definition of having a form of godliness but denying the power thereof. Their lives weren't about pointing people to the goodness of God. That was not what they were trying to do. Their lives were about collecting the accolades of humans. And in their attempt, they didn't become righteous. They became self-righteous. believing that behavior modification was the name of the game, so they just hid behind that behavior modification, that if I'm just good enough and I do the right things and I say the right things, that I'm good before God. But as Paul said, your righteousness is filthy rags. They end up putting more faith in their fig leaves than the promises of God. They were practicing hypocrite. And we do the same thing most Sundays, don't we? We do the same thing most Sundays, don't we? Come in here and play the game because we've learned how to do it so well. Come in here and we can't even worship because something's bothering our minds. We're here to worship a holy God. Are we doing it? Hiding behind the mask of all of our religious jargon. At least we sound holy, but are you holy? That's the question. Hiding behind the suit and tie. You could wear a 3-piece suit and be rotting inside because it doesn't matter about what you wear. It matters what's going on in the heart. We could hide behind it all, and we have become great at it, haven't we? But how many of you are dying where you sit? How many of you are screaming out like, God, I need you to do something, but you can't do it because you refuse to get vulnerable with them? He looks at these hypocrites and he says in Matthew 23, 27 through 28, he's talking to the religious leaders and he says, woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You are like whitewashed tombs which look beautiful on the outside, but on the inside are full of the bones of the dead and everything unclean. In 28, and in the same way, on the outside you appear to people as righteous, but on the inside you are full of hypocrisy and wickedness. Because many of us are much like Jacob, aren't we, I find? Wrestling with God to bless us, wrestling with God to heal us, wrestling with God to set us free, but shocked in the wrestling and in the moments to where we want everything that we want, when He stops us, holds on to us and goes, that's fine, but tell me your name. Tell me your name. Tell me who you are. But God, I don't want to answer that. Just give me what I want. I don't want to answer that. Just give me what I want. I'm tired of asking that because I can't answer it myself. God, I am a wreck. But I didn't think your name was Jacob. I know I've lied about it, but God, I needed it to get where I was. Where I am. Yeah, but just tell me your name. Who cares what my name is? Why does it matter? Because it does. It cares, and God cares because He created you with a purpose. And maybe that's the whole point to the question that God asked Jacob. Maybe, listen to me, maybe what's going on is that God can't bless, can't heal, and can't set free someone that you pretend to be. Maybe He can't heal, maybe He can't bless, maybe He can't set free who you pretend to be. Because He wants you. He doesn't want the facade. He doesn't want the cover-up. He doesn't want the concealment. He wants you. He's always wanted you. He's always wanted you. Because I sometimes think that we feel as if God will only love us if we just present ourselves better than we are. If we clean up well enough. How many times have you heard someone say, hey, you know what? I'll just clean myself up before I come to God. I got to get a little bit better with my actions. I got to act a little bit better before I can come in and accept God. And I just want to scream at them going like, there is nothing you can do to get any better. It is better for you to come completely broken and shattered before Him, because that's when He can do the miraculous work of salvation. We get in this idea that we have to sew our fig leaves together to look a little more presentable. But I got to tell you, you just look ridiculous. We don't want to bring all this rage and all this insecurity of what's happened to him because we think we've got to be prim and proper. We've got to do it well. I can't be angry. No. You can go angry. You can go upset. You can go with your tears and your fears. You can go to him. But we don't want to bring the shattered heart and the shattered soul before him. We want to try and hide and conceal our sin from him because that's what we've learned. Listen to me. You can't come to God that way and expect to be set free. You can't. He doesn't care how nice of a smile you put on. You've got to come completely shattered and broken, desperate for God to do something in your life. I think the problem with today's church is that we're not desperate enough for Him anymore. We're not desperate enough for Him anymore. I was praying the other night, and He told me, you need to tell your church to get ready because times are going to be getting tough. I'm telling you, times are getting tough. And He's going to test. He's going to test what's inside of you. So now is the time to quit being scared, to quit putting on the mask, to quit pretending, quit faking it till you make it, because He's looking for the remnant. He's looking for the remnant. We want to try to hide and conceal our sins, but you can't come to God that way and expect to be set free, because in order to be set free, you must come naked, stripped of everything, completely vulnerable and maskless, because you'll never be free until you are fed up with where you are. Tired of where I am. Tired of what's breaking me down. Tired of what's ripping me apart. Because until you become desperate enough to find out that His grace is sufficient for you, you will always be empty. That boy I was telling you about in the beginning, it took a couple years before I could drop my guard. You know, the one who was wanting to fight me as soon as he met me. He was acting like the toughest guy I'd ever walked the planet at 12 years old with a sweet bowl cut. Well, eventually that kid would drop his guard and allow me to get to know him. What I find is that every single one of us, there's a reason why we react to pressure and hurt and pain the way we are. And what I have found through this situation is that if I had never gotten to know Him and He had never chosen to be vulnerable with me, I would have never known who He is. I would have never known who He is. And one night while I was staying the night at His house, that's how far we had come, I would ask him sort of about this situation. Dude, like, what was the deal when we got you the new shoes and everything else, and we're riding on our bikes and you hop off wanting to beat me down, and we're laughing about it now, but at the time, I didn't like you at all, man, I told him. And he said, yeah, I could tell. It was great to hear that you were a Christian running away from him. And I said, touche. He looked at me, he said, do you really want to know? I said, it would be nice. I mean, whatever it is, if you don't want to, you don't have to, but it would help me understand what's going on. And kind of stood there for a second. He looked down. I'll never forget. He looked down and he goes, okay. He said, follow me. So I followed him into his bedroom. And he had this sweet Chicago Bulls locker. And he goes into this locker, he opens it up, and in that locker is that shoebox, that Nike shoebox from the shoes that we have. And he goes, everything's in here. And I said, okay. And he goes, you take as much time as you want to read it. I'll be in the living room. I was like, oh, okay. And I opened this box, sitting on his bunk bed, because his brother sleeps on the top, he sleeps on the bottom of it. And I open it up, and there's all these articles, and there's all these letters written from his family members. And these articles, and when I looked at the ones from his family members, there were stained marks from where it looked like he had been bawling his eyes out. And I started thinking about it. I'm like, I wonder what's going on. Article by article, I started reading his story. One report and one officer said that he had come from his family was the worst child abuse case in Ohio. Not for shock value, but just to tell you what he was coming from because it shocked me. His father had beaten the tar out of every single one of those kids. His older brother, he had a brother that was the same name as my brother, and his name was Rodney. And at one point, he had to drive himself to the hospital because his dad, while he was drunk, had stuck a screwdriver through his foot. And he was too drunk to drive, so this 13-year-old boy drives himself to the hospital. They were known to be coming into school with bruises all over their body. To top it all off, and again, not to shock anything, but just to tell you what he's coming from, the thing that happened was that he had a son. It would have been his brother. He was mentally handicapped in some degree, and the father did not like that at all. And so the father took it within his hands to end his misery, and so he boiled him alive, killing him. I'm sitting on his bed, and it's like God began to show me what was going on in his life. The reason why he's fighting and he's this way is because he's had to do it his entire life. The reason why he's wrecked and broken, because that's all he's known from a very little age. The reason why he's fighting is because he's had to fight his own father. And my heart was ripped out at this. I am sitting there weeping over what is going on. And I'm thinking, God, forgive me. Because I didn't know. I looked down and there was just tears all over the pages, and mine were added to it because I couldn't believe that there was a child that has gone through this, that was the same age as me and has gone through horrendous things in his life. Hiding it because he didn't know if he could trust anybody. Hiding it because he didn't want to be looked at as he caused it to happen. I remember when I went to talk to him, he's like, I couldn't do anything about it. I remember telling him, you didn't have to, man. You were 8 years old. It's broken. Sometimes you never know what someone is going through. Sometimes you never know, and he is hiding his entire life, and he would be a difficult kid he was bouncing from house to house to house because they deemed him too difficult to deal with. And I remember this was a couple years after I found all this out. We're in my room, and he was asking me about this Jesus thing. Remember, like it was yesterday, he goes, hey, so you know that thing you were talking to me about, that whole hell thing? I said, yeah, I do. Because is that real? I said, it is. He goes, because that scares me, man. I said, it should. It should. Scared of this concept of hell that he'd heard about. And he was worried that God didn't have room for someone like him. I remember him telling me, he said, after all, look at what I come from. My dad's a murderer and I didn't stop it. He even goes like, why would God ever want someone like me? Nobody else does. Shortly after that adopted family ended up putting him back into foster care because he was too difficult. But before that would happen, I remember being in my room, and I remember that I told him about the thief on the cross, and Pastor Danny, can I have you come and start to play? I told him about the thief on the cross. about this legally charged criminal who had also murdered people. And he's hanging next to a suffering Savior. And he is captivated by what he experiences and sees on this cross. I mean, the truth is that this thief, he has no reason to think that he himself could ever be saved. He has no reason to even ask anything of this Jesus. After all, you've got to understand that moments before, this same thief was cussing at Jesus with his other friend who was crucified right next to him, hurling insults. I mean, why would a criminal who had just done that even attempt to ask this Jesus for anything? You made fun of him. You mocked him. You've murdered someone. You're hanging as a criminal. You are a legally charged criminal. What are you doing? And I remember my friend just looking at me as I'm telling him this. I said, he doesn't even deserve it. I mean, I would be a little more perplexed even. I wouldn't think to ask the question. I don't deserve that. But to our shock, this criminal, he does. He is bold enough not to care about how it looks, not to care about what he's done. Because really there has to be a point, and the only thing I think is that this thief is tired of carrying the pain. This thief is tired of carrying the wounds. He's tired of the charade that gets just ridiculously hard to keep up with. And with every struggling breath that this thief can muster, he screams for Jesus to remember him in his kingdom. A criminal begging for crumbs from God. And he comes before God naked and vulnerable. And to my surprise, you know what Jesus tells him? In Luke 23:43, Jesus answered him. He said this, "Truly, I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise." And I looked at him and I said, because it doesn't matter what you have done. It doesn't matter what your family has done. It doesn't matter how badly you've messed it all up. It doesn't matter that he wasn't baptized. It doesn't matter that he did not understand the doctrine of justification by faith. He has nothing that should allow him to get this request granted by Jesus at all. He is just a ragamuffin begging God for mercy. Truth is, the only thing that he has is a desperation in his dying moment for something greater than himself, greater than his pain, greater than his charade. Sounds like so many of us, doesn't it? Here today, looking for something greater than our pain, greater than our issues, greater than our defeats, greater than our tragedies, greater than our trauma. This man could probably never actually understand it. He probably couldn't even articulate what God is going to do. But what he does know is that the man who is dying on the cross next to him has told him that he can come to, that he can be a part of the kingdom too. And he's also saying to every single person here today that you can come to. No matter what you've done, no matter how broken you are, no matter how much this world has beaten you down, no matter how in bondage you are, you can come too. But in order to do it, you have to come naked and vulnerable and quit hiding behind the mask. He drops the mask because if you want to be set free, you have to become vulnerable. You have to allow yourself to feel again. And I know that some of you, by looking at you, you have shut down the ability to feel because it has caused you so much pain. But you have to drop the charade. You have to drop the fear. You have to let your guard down. You have to remove the fig leaves, stand before a holy God, and allow Him to mold, to shape, to break you down, to bring you into fellowship with Him. Because then and only then will you be set free, be healed, and be able to do what He has done. The truth is, what God told me when I was putting this together is some of you are hiding from your calling because you feel that you've done things that God can't forgive. You're hiding. So take off the mask and get real with Him this morning. For some of you, it has been a long time since you felt the power of God move in your life. He's here today.